Good afternoon, bonjour, tilwanam, depending on where you're coming from. Let's say thank you to everybody who's joining us for today's session. Back to school, back to tradition. We're giving folks a few minutes to join us as I've disabled the waiting room. Please make sure that you're able to have good audio, that you can hear us well. If you want to test your mic, you're welcome to. But for the sake of our session, we'll invite you to stay muted for most of it. If you have questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself by using that button on your screen. You can also raise your hand in the action area, type something in the chat. I'll try to be mindful of that as we go forward with our afternoon together. It's just about 1 o'clock Central Time. And so I want to say welcome and thank you for joining us for this afternoon, for today's session. Some of you may be calling in from the West Coast, as we usually have a few of our relatives join us from that area. A few things for housekeeping before we get started. As a gentle reminder, this session is being recorded today. So please note that if you do not want to have your visual there on the screen, you're welcome to have just your picture and or your name, as most of you do. If you'd like to show us your smiling face, you're welcome to do that also, especially when you engage and ask a question or respond, have something to add to the conversation. It would be great to see who's joining us. And I know sometimes the internet can be kind of spotty and doesn't always work 100% well for us. So we know that sometimes we need a little bit of grace in that area to work with the Wi-Fi setups that we all have access to. But again, thank you for joining us for today's session. Any comments or questions before we get started? I thought I heard someone trying to say something.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
No, that's okay. If you have a question, immediately, please share that before we get started. In the chat box, I want to invite each of you to put who you are, where you're coming from, what community you serve. We'd like to know where we're calling in from, who we're working with, and what tribal community, whether it's urban or rural. It's really important for us to understand who is out here sharing their gifts, who is out here helping our people. And with that, I'm going to see about sharing my screen to get us started with a slide deck. And then I will turn it over to our presenter for this afternoon. But yes, in the chat box, thank you, Dominic. I know you've been on for a while, so thank you. Anybody else want to put who they are, where they're coming from in the chat? That would be great so we can see who's online with us today. And I'll try to be mindful of the chat box and see what questions we have being posted and what people are curious about for today's session. But as I get ready to share our screen, please know that you're welcome to post any questions or comments that you may have in the chat box. You're welcome to keep yourself muted for the sake of the majority of the presentation, but if you have questions or comments, again, please use the little reaction button or raising your hand. You can unmute yourself and share your question aloud or post it in the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. But we're going to begin our time together by saying thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here at the center. And I'm going to share this screen if I can get it correct. Which screen I want to share. I think I finally have it. Hopefully y'all can see this screen. Do you see the two images or do you see the one image? Nicole, can you put up your number of fingers? Do you see one image on your screen or do you see two images?
Two images.
Okay, thank you, Jose. I know I need to swap something here. So give me a minute. Well, I'm fine if you can see two images, but I just can't figure it out quick enough.
I see two.
Thank you. I know there's a swap button up here somewhere. Okay, here we go. Jose, one more time. Do you see one or two images?
Now we see one.
Thank you for your help. Well, good afternoon, and I want to say thank you to those of you who are helping me figure some technology out while we're gathered for today's session. Back to school, back to tradition, because many of us are getting back into the swing of things with our young people, with our youth in the school settings, in our community settings. The children, the youth have had some time off in some areas, and so now we want to welcome them back and remind them the importance of staying connected to their tradition, to their culture, to their identity of family and tribal affiliation, so they can be grounded and start their year off in a really good way. I'm Dr. Allison Bays, and I serve at the Native Center for Behavior Health, specifically in our Prevention Center. And I'm honored to include each of you in this afternoon's session, along with our presenter, who's going to share some great ideas of how we can help our young people and their families start off the school year in a really positive note and do amazing things as they begin the year together. Although we're gathered virtually, you'll see that here on the map, our center is housed at the University of Iowa. We're in the yellow section of the map. And our center actually is kind of like an umbrella organization that offers services in addiction technology transfer center, our mental health area, our mental health with K through 12, and our trauma stress center with children. And then, as I mentioned, I serve in the prevention area. I actually come from the South Texas region, with my relatives being Tapilam Coahuitecan Nation, and I live and work remotely for the University of Iowa out of the state of Minnesota. We are generously funded by a grant from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and the content of our creation of our session this afternoon and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian Alaska Native Prevention Technology Transfer Center. After today's event, it's important that you'll be receiving some follow-up information. You'll receive the links to the presentation slides and the recording, as well as an evaluation survey. I have it here on the screen for you, but I'll post it in the chat at the beginning of our time together, and then sometime towards the end, it'll be posted again. And it's really important that you fill out this survey for us. It does several things. It lets us know what your thoughts are about the session that was provided, the information that you were given, the ideas that were shared, and it also lets our funders know what you appreciate about our center. They are anonymous and cannot be linked back to you. So I please encourage you to take time after today's session to fill out this survey. As I mentioned, we are gathered virtually today, and so it's really important to our center because our university is located in Iowa near the Meskwaki settlement, that we acknowledge the land and pay respect to Indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken over and inhabited, past and present. We want to honor the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. This calls us to commit to forever learn how to be better stewards of these lands through our action, advocacy, support, and education. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced occupation of Native American territories, and we respect the many diverse Indigenous people connected to this land on which we gather from time immemorial. While injustices are still being committed against our people on Turtle Island, today we say thank you to those that stand with us and acknowledge that land reparations must be made to allow for healing for our Indigenous people and to Mother Earth herself. And this document was created by three of my colleagues, Ella and Keely Driscoll and Sean Bear, all who come from the Meskwaki Nation, which is very near the University of Iowa. So with that, we begin our time together, honoring one another, offering each other grace in the space that we're gathered here today, thinking about our relatives in Maui and across Turtle Island, those who continue to suffer, those who continue to need healing. We ask that you bring together our minds, our spirits, bring us together as one, Lord, so that we can continue to honor and serve the Creator and to serve our communities in this wonderful opportunity that we have to learn to serve our people better. In this we pray. I hope. Well, today I have the privilege of letting you know about this wonderful person, Tanea Winder. She's been with our center as a consultant for quite a while now, and she continues to amaze me. And I'm so glad that she said yes to this opportunity because she's a very talented author, singer, songwriter, poet, and much, much more. She is Southern Ute, Pyramid Lake Paiute, and Duckwater Shoshone. And her performances, her work is all focused on heart work because that is the focus, the impetus of what makes her do such a great job. She focuses on our hearts, and her life path is one that is meant to follow by using her gifts and her passions. And this is what she shares with the community across Indian country. And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to learn some great ideas from her to implement in your communities, with your school systems, with your tribal youth, and those who are in need of finding better ways to offer culturally responsive, culturally appropriate methods to serve our young people and our communities so that as we move forward, we continue to heal. So with that, I turn it over to Tanea. Any questions, comments? I'm going to mute myself, but if you have comments or questions, anyone else, please post them in the chat. I will monitor that and find appropriate times so that we can ask them and engage with our presenter. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bays. So excited to be here with you all today. But as she said, definitely drop those questions into the chat. I'm just excited to share, going back to school is always such a special time of year. For me, it used to be one of my favorites. Like I love thinking about the classes I was going to take. So excited to try to get into college. And I love that I would get to be with my friends again, because, my mom was one of those, keep an eagle eye watch on us because she wanted us to, be safe. So I love school because I got that independence. But as we know, with that independence, sometimes comes these struggles, sometimes peer pressure and other things like that. So, for me, I loved that ritual of going back to school, from buying school supplies, wondering how we'd use those supplies, trying to get some school clothes, trying to figure out what I was going to wear on the first day. But going back to school also can mean anxiety, right? Like for me, school was made to feel like that competitive environment where only the smart students or the best students mattered with their grades, or getting on varsity meant more than like being valedictorian. So just a lot of competing things. And of course, again, with that anxiety came a lot of pressure. And I know some of my peers would get excited about going to school for the same reasons, sports in schools. But for a lot of them, it meant consistent meals for breakfast, for lunch. It meant structure. It meant connection through the classroom, sports and clubs. And it also meant having a safe space just to be. Sometimes that safe space, means the safety and comforts, like be able to stretch out of your comfort zone. But, or for some people, it also meant being safe enough to actually share and express what they were feeling, and for those who couldn't express what they were feeling verbally, it meant acting out, maybe what they were too uncomfortable to admit deep down, whether it was loneliness, separation, that feeling of unworthiness or not enoughness, or just disconnection. So because going back to school means and can mean so many different things for many of us, I wanted to just share some activities that I've used in my youth work just to help students be reminded that going back to school also can mean going back to tradition and reminding our students and our families just of the sacred connections that we carry. So this is just an overview of what I'm going to cover today, just a little bit about me, I'm going to share different activities, and that's point 3 to point 9, and then some resources you can put on your shelf in your classroom or community space, and then have time for questions there at the end as well. So I'm going to share as much as I can, and then hopefully leave some time at the end for questions as well. So again, just to ground us in what we're doing, just to join us in learning about sharing those traditional ways to start off the school year in a good way. This is part 1. There'll be another session coming up, part 2. So just a little bit about me. My name is Tanea. I'm a citizen of the Duckwater Shoshone Nation. I'm also Pyramid Lake Paiute Southern Ute, and I have Dene and Black ancestries as well. I grew up on the Southern Ute Reservation, and I currently am in Tiwa territory as a guest here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I have run an Upward Bound program for Native youth for 11 years. I've traveled throughout the country by myself and with a group of Indigenous artists called the Dream Warriors, just visiting different reservations and schools throughout the country to do workshops, motivational speaking, performance. I play guitar and all that fun stuff because I just love finding different outlets for all of these inlets that we have in our lives. So this activity is called Walk in My Mocks. And so, you know, each of us has a different journey, a different way we walk upon the earth. And so one way to do this activity is where it's going to be a drawing, like an outline of a moccasin that you can share with your students. I did this once when I was visiting a middle school on a reservation in Minnesota. And it was my first time working with students younger. I normally work with high school and up. And so I was trying to just like in my hotel room, figure out like, what kind of activities can I do? And so I thought maybe I can print out just an outline of a shoe or a moccasin. And so the next day I had students, you know, just because there was some bullying and other things going on, I had them just write on the moccasins. You know, we just talked about, you know, what are moccasins used for in your tribe? Like, what are their purpose? Like really just trying to ground it in your community. And so I had them use that outline, or they could either write or draw, like what's a day like walking in your mocks, or what's a day like walking in your shoes? Because a lot of times, you know, our youth feel like, well, maybe you don't understand me. You don't know what I'm going through. Like, you don't know why I didn't turn in that paper. We don't always know what's going on for them at home or in their personal lives. So this is an activity that you can do, is just give them these handouts of moccasins or shoes, and just give them pencils, pens, colored pencils, have them draw what a day is like in their life for those who are more visual, or you can have them write maybe a poem. Or I try to meet people where they're at, even if it's just like write a bullet list of what it's like in your day. And then afterwards, just, you know, share if they feel comfortable sharing. For us, everyone wanted theirs not to share what they wrote, but for us to put them all on the wall and kind of just walk through and read what everybody wrote. But these are some examples I found, and I can share these with Dr. Bays to send out with the recording as well, from different artists that where you can write in part of it, or you can have them draw their own if you have a talented student who wants to draw one that everybody can use or share. But that's the activity, and we're going to practice that just so we could see what it's like. So I hope everyone has something to write with, because we're going to do this activity. And so that's your prompt. Just pick a mock that resonates with you. Maybe you have your moccasins in your office, I don't know, but we're going to spend 5 minutes just writing, you know, what is it like to live in your shoes? And it can be as literal as you want. Like, who do you see or interact with? What do you celebrate with each step? What do you work or walk to overcome? You know, describe a day in your moccasins or your shoes. So we're going to spend 5 minutes doing that, and then we're going to see if people want to share. So I'll mute myself, I'll set a little timer, and I'll share when we have 1 minute left, just so you can wrap it up too. But 5 minutes doing the Walk in My Mocks activity. We have about 1 more minute left for those who want to wrap up what you're writing. All right, so that was our 5 minutes. If anyone would like to share a little bit of what you wrote, about what's the day like in your mocks, you can either unmute yourself or you can write part of it in the chat. Just welcome anyone to share what you came up with or maybe what resonated about the activity. One thing I like about probably every exercise shared today too is it can really be done for any age. I think that's what the great thing about our traditions too is that it, from youth to elders, kids to elders, like everybody can find something. Whether you're working with little babies who are just learning to color, they can color these mocks, or if you and your colleagues, I just left with my main job doing a workshop on just the identities that we bring to the workplace and how those can impact how we show up, our trust building, our relationship building. And so, I think even just the smell of crayons or markers, like it all brings us back to our childhood too. So it's even a good activity to do with your coworkers or with parents. Sometimes we have parents who might have those tensions if their kids aren't getting along, but it's like, let's all do this walk in the mocks activity together, the kids and the parents who might not be getting along, and just try to find some common ground, because we literally all walk on Mother Earth as Indigenous people. Like, we got struggles, we got things to overcome, like just what was mentioned with our relatives in Hawaii. Like, there's the world, capitalism, all those things come against us. Like, we gotta stand together. All right, but anyone want to share? It's going to be somewhere too. So hope if you're like, ooh, getting my creativity flowing.
I'll share.
Okay, thank you.
So I did like just based on today. So who I will see or interact with today. I went to my gym earlier this morning, so I got to interact with my coaches and members, friends at the gym. Have a good time, had a tough workout. Later tonight, I am interacting and meeting up with my roller skate crew. Every Wednesday night, we do a meetup out here in the desert, in Palm Desert in Southern California. So I'm excited, looking forward to seeing them and just having some self-care and not think about the world. I'm celebrating being able to move and just enjoy life. I suffer from back pain, so there's times where I kind of paralyzed and I can't move at all. So just celebrating my little wins. And then something that I'm overcoming this week, like we've discussed so far, the fires in Hawaii. For me, it's trauma and flashbacks. So I was a part of a wildfire up in Northern California back in 2018, if I remember correctly, or Camp Fire. It destroyed one of our towns in our county. And at the time, I was a CPS social worker, and more than a third of our workforce lost their homes. They were displaced. And so the rest of us had to take on more caseloads while those folks recovered. And, we're in their own grief. And so this week, just kind of hearing about the fires in Hawaii, everyone losing their home, the devastation out there, just kind of reminds me of kind of what we went through. I was fortunate enough not to lose my home, but it was a very dark time for us in our county. and just something that I have not overcome yet. I know we have documentaries out there on our fire, and I can't watch them
Mm.
because it just triggers me.
Thank you for sharing, Jose, and prayers as you're working through this time, being activated by those triggers and all those things. But hearing you share, it just made me think too, like depending on how old the people you work with, or even for our own self-care, like doing this activity every day. Like I'm really trying to get into this habit of daily journaling and daily writing. And sometimes it's like, well, what am I going to write about? And I know I need to process stuff, but I avoid things. But if, you know, you've motivated me with your sharing, Jose, like I'm going to use my journal and I'm just going to do this prompt walk. What was my day like? What was my walk in the Mox like for that day? You know, just so I can remember, because especially when you're triaging and helping other people through their trauma and yours, like you just forget. So like there's things you want to remember and things you forget, but like if we're writing those down, then, you know, maybe once a month you review your month and kind of just say, oh, like I kind of ignored that. Like I think maybe I need to go to a ceremony, or I need to talk to someone about that. I need to process it. So thank you for sharing, because that's something I hadn't thought of, but I think it could be good, you know, for students, even people struggling to, like, just to kind of see your growth over time. And I see Josh shared in the chat too, you know, thank you for sharing. And with that, as well as kind of like how Dr. Bay says, like thinking about the balance of it all, like even doing this activity is kind of just like that inventory, seeing where your time went, what you can, how you might need to give time back to yourself as well. But would anyone else like to share before we move on? Right, cool. There'll be other opportunities to share too. This next activity, you know, a few years ago, my artist friends and I were visiting an urban center, Indian center in Dallas, Texas, and we were working with the students, and we were trying to get them to think about healing and trauma and those things. And we were asking them, like, well, what do you do when you're hurt? Or what do you do when you don't feel good? And what do you do when you need healing? And some little kid, you know, must have been 3 or 4, was just like, you put medicine on it. And I loved that so much. Because, you know, he probably gets medicine, but just like the metaphor of what he was saying, it's like, yeah, that's literally what we need to do when we hurt, put medicine on it, whether it's from the doctor or from like our tradition and culture. And I think that's a hard thing that for me to just learn the cyclical nature of healing that I wish I could have taught younger me back then, you know, because I kind of thought, I'm going to get to this place where I'm healed. I'm going to do therapy for 2 years and be healed. But we know it doesn't work like that. So I try to like use this image with people. You know, you have the experience and there's always a lesson and a blessing, you know, and it keeps going. You know, if you're not going to learn the lesson and just trying to take that blessing, you're going to go back through the cycle again. So, and just accepting it, like every experience is going to come with a blessing, and every experience is going to come with maybe a hard lesson too. But you know, one of my creative writing professors, she said, I can't remember the name of the tree, and I hope I can find her one day to ask her, but she said in South America, there's literally this tree, if you accidentally cut yourself by laying against it, like your hand, your skin will get infected. But ironically, like the only medicine that can heal you from that is made from the tree. So I just always think of it, you know, like the source of the hurt can also be the source of the healing. So how do we, you know, teach those we're working with early on to break those cycles? You know, how do we break those cycles of trauma whether it's someone coming up to you, to a student, to like smoke or vape, or getting someone to stop bullying another student? We have to help our students, you know, view it as opportunity to break unhealthy cycles of toxicity and trauma. So one thing I'm trying to do too is just when I'm working with students or parents is to just have them say, you know, I'm a cycle breaker. Like, this is a situation. Are you gonna keep doing harm, or are you gonna break cycles? And some people really get into it. You know, I'm a cycle breaker, like just having your peers shout it. You shout it to yourself if you have a frustrating day, just like, I'm a cycle breaker. You know, write it on your whiteboard or make it into a sticker your students can put on their desk, or a magnet parents can put on their refrigerators. Could be the daily mantra as a teacher or educator or social worker, just to teach our those we work with to be respectful and kind but accountable to breaking those cycles too. So just want to gift that to you all to say that about yourselves, because you are a cycle breaker, you know, and to take a minute to think about how you're breaking cycles today. So that leads into this activity, the put some medicine on it activity. You know, have everybody think about, you know, what does medicine mean to you? You know, for me, it can mean people or activities. You know, people can be your medicine if you have a friend who grounds you, if your students or those you work with have somebody who helps them, or even a pet or animal relatives. But just activities or people that make you feel good about yourself, to get your mind off those negative things or help ground you in your body and emotions. So we're going to have everyone write 4 things. And so use the medicine wheel, you know, to identify the 4 medicines in your life. So again, it could be people who make you happy or activities that make you happy and feel good. So we're going to have everybody, well, again, we'll do 5 minutes this time. So you kind of have about 1 minute for each medicine, but just write down 4 medicines that you see in other people. Actually, no, we're going to do 5 minutes, because you're writing down 4 medicines. Look at me trying to change the medicine wheel. You're writing down 4 medicines that other people are to you, but then you're going to write down 4 medicines that you carry, like within you. Maybe there's your ability to calm people down or help people feel seen. And again, there's no wrong way to do this. If today you're feeling your inner medicine and you can't see it from other people right now, they're testing you, just go ahead and write those internal medicines you carry. If you feel burnt out and depleted and you can't think about what you carry, but you know that book or that movie or that person or that plant medicine that makes you feel good, you can write those down. So we'll do 5 minutes for this put some medicine on it activity. And then again, we'll invite people to share either vocally or in the chat. I'm going to play some writing music too, so hopefully it comes. About 1 more minute. I was just jamming to myself over here. I'll figure out how to do the music for the next one. All right, so gonna go ahead and invite people to share again. If you want to unmute yourself, or again, drop in the chat. Could be what you wrote. It could even just be a reflection too, like, man, I thought about the medicine I carry for a while.
I'll go ahead and share.
Cool.
Hello, my name is Monica Davis. So for the 4 medicines that make me feel good are music, prayer, family time, and going to see my grandma on the reservation. And then the medicines that I carry that help other people are humor, having empathy for others, my traditional beliefs, and having unconditional love for people. That's what I have so far.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Makes me think too, like hearing you speak. Sometimes my 3-year-old nephew jokes about wanting to be a doctor. So maybe when he's older, when he's acting out, I'll just write him a prescription with those medicines, like go outside, go hug grandma, different things like that. So thank you for sharing, Monica.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to share?
I'll go ahead and share. I think being adventurous by doing spontaneous drives with people I love to be with, and to create things through fiber like knitting, crocheting, sewing, and also praying for others and being supportive to them. And also baking sourdough bread for people who appreciate the process. And I was thinking of 4 people that when you were talking about, it could be 4 people too that bring me medicine in a certain way. So Dan, he's my love, security, and strength. Nicole is my creative outlet. Erin grounds me by the reality of life, struggles, and need. My friend is my comfort, like putting on an old pair of shoes. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I love that. You're a writer for sure. I love the friend being like a comfortable pair of shoes. And also that your medicine literally feeds other people with the bread and things that you make. So that's lovely. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I see Dr. Bass here too. Laughter is medicine. We love laughter. We love humor too. All right, anyone else want to share? All right, we're going to go on to the next one. This next one is called My Heart Beats For, enter the blank activity, enter in the blank, fill in the blank, because I think part of tradition is reminding each other, where we come from, what we've overcome, and how much we are continuing to heal as Indigenous people, as people. And one way to help students think about that, the concept of purpose in a more tangible way, is to like literally think about our heart beating in our chests. So whether you're working with or supporting anyone who's feeling disconnection or extreme disconnection, just always say like, close your eyes, put one hand on your chest and just breathe. And can you feel your heart beating? And it's never over while our heart is still beating. There's always options when our heart is still beating. And just to ask, do you feel your heart beating? And with each beat, think and pray about your purpose. What makes you happy? Why is it important for us not to just think of ourselves, but also our peers, our families, our people? Another thing you can do during this exercise too, to gear up for the writing part, is to just have everyone put their hand on their hearts and say some affirmations, like positive things, and everyone can say a different one and have everybody repeat it, whether it's I'm enough, I'm strong, or I belong here. And then just ask that those words, they feel those words deep in their heart. I often think about this one too, because sometimes, just living in this world, it's like, oh, I wish I had a job that, made me more money, or I wish like I could go here and there, or I wish I could do this. And for me, I have to always like think about this, like, well, who does my heart beat for? And I have to remember, my heart beats for my people. This mantra has even helped me when I've had to leave jobs that weren't a good fit for me. When I had one job where I wasn't directly serving Indigenous people, and I was so miserable. And I realized one time, and then when I realized like this, because I'm not working with my people, it didn't feel good. And, I cried and yeah, my whole life is my only job where I wasn't working with Natives. And then I had to, find another job, thankfully, to work with Indigenous people, because that's who my heart beats for. So this one, you can make it as many times as you want. Again, sometimes people with coloring too, if you just do an outline of a heart, have them write inside the heart who their heart beats for. But we're going to do this one together. So I'm going to have everybody just do one example that you can drop in the chat. Who does your heart beat for? And I'll put mine in there. Oh, there you go. Shani's on the same vibe. For family, for kids. Grandchildren. Traveling, exploring, adventure, family. Heartbeats for my loved ones. Heartbeats for my daughter. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Family. Nicole Grant. So that one's a good one too. Even just at the close of an activity, just to have everyone go around and say, who does your heart beat for? Nice, your dogs. I was gonna put my cats too. My heart beats for my little kitties. But yeah, and again, any of these workshop activities to be sent out, the recording, PowerPoint, feel free to take them, adapt them. You don't have to credit me, like say you learned this from Tanea or whoever, because I believe our shared knowledge, our communal knowledge is what makes us stronger, what makes us powerful as people. So anything shared today, you can take and adapt and use however you want. Oh, thank you, Monica. Heartbeats for children, future grandchildren. I like that. My Dene people, my significant other, my parents, my elders, my creator, and for my angels. Beautiful. It's a good one. Sometimes I'll do this too, and if I'm having a hard time falling asleep because I've had an anxious day, I'll just put my hand on my heart and breathe and just say those things too, who my heart beats for. Oh, nice. My heart beats for serving the creator and serving my purpose. Also the Sonoran Desert. Love it. Yeah, you could even use these as purpose statements, if you're working with your colleagues as well. There are those days when we're just like, why do we do this work? And we need to be reminded why we do the work. And you can just go around and have people do that instead of indigenizing a my purpose statement to be my heart beats for statement. All right, so we're going to go to the next one. So this one is a graphic I had found online. And I think this is their social media handle if anybody shares it. But just to, again, thinking about how how tradition heals. Another exercise of, the putting medicine on it too could be thinking of music as medicine. We all have traditional songs we can sing, or we can write our own music or play an instrument or flute or drum. And to encourage those we work with to express themselves. I think sometimes when, you want to calm people down and you have them do the box breathing or other breathing techniques, like why not just bring out a native flute and just have them, because it's a different way of controlling your breath. Literally the breath you're putting into the instrument is what's making the sound come out. And it's just, I think, a beautiful metaphor for life as well. So for this activity, you can either make a large copy of the drum and have students write a short song on it, or even write a prayer on it. Even just write, maybe for some people, like it's harder to get that entry point. It might just be like, write down your favorite songs, like write down the songs that help you feel happy or calm you down, and then think more about, well, why does that song work for you? What's its purpose and all that. And then if you do it that way, you have a playlist for your after school workshop or for your students of the music. A music heals playlist is a good fun activity as well too. All right, so this one, sometimes you've heard that saying, like, you're between a rock and a hard place. So I always try to find ways to just make sure I'm like connected, even though I'm in my little remote office working at my desk. Sometimes I try to have water around me, try to smudge in the morning, but I also like think about, how am I connecting to Mother Earth while I'm sitting here? And so Mother Earth and its inhabitants just have so much to teach us. So whenever we feel disconnected or ungrounded, it's important to find ways to reconnect, whether it's going for a short walk outside, stepping outside to take a few deep breaths of fresh air, standing on the land helps ground us. This simple act of stepping on the earth can be a powerful method of thinking of who and what grounds you when you're in between a rock and a hard place. So I do this with my toddler nephew when he does get overwhelmed. I say, let's go outside, sweetheart. So let's go outside and just take some deep breaths. And then he goes out there and he practices just with me. And soon enough, he forgets like what he was throwing his little tantrum about. For me, one thing I do too is I literally keep a rock with me, a little round, perfectly round rock I found once when I was helping my mom gather sweat rocks. And I keep it with me, on my desk. I take it when I'm like traveling. Sometimes I get travel anxiety and I'll just hold it like in my hand. So when I get nervous, it just reminds me, helps me remind me that Creator made things to be strong like stone, that I can be strong too. So I'm just going to ask everybody to drop into the chat, what is one way you keep yourself grounded when tested? What do you do when you're between a rock and a hard place? So I'll have everyone take a minute and drop those in the chat. And you can also just unmute yourself too if you don't want to drop it in the chat. You can share however you feel comfortable sharing. Friends, talk to dad or sister, journal. I like that, sitting outside on the balcony when it's nice and cool, deep breathing, walk in the woods, meditation, journal. Awesome. Y'all are pros. You have those self-care techniques. Attend peyote meeting. Thank you all. Those are really good examples. So I wanted to share one activity that you all can do too. is to think of an eagle feather. You know, I think it is meant to, let me see, reconnecting with nature, find a nice quiet place to think. Oh, I like that, talking to birds and deer. Even just, yeah, 5 mile walk, that's good. And at the end, sit and listen. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, everyone, for sharing. But yeah, you know, the eagle feather at the bottom is kind of like the plumes, you know, and how it looks like that, look like our baby hair almost. It's almost a metaphor for life in that way. Like when we are born and we grow, and this is our life path. And each decision we make makes the little offshoots of the feather. And as we live our life, as we continue to grow, that's how the feather is formed. But I also like to use this to remind people, like, even though, you know, you grow out as far as you can during that phase of your life, that you're always connected. You're always connected back to the stem or the quill, the middle. No matter which direction you go, you're always back connected back to the middle. So this one is, you know, there's times in your life where you might feel disconnected or untethered, or those that you're working with might feel that. And when those moments occur, to do this activity or think of that eagle feather. So you're going to have everybody make a list of all the people, you know, people, family, friends, coaches, teachers, pets, anyone or anything that helps you remember that you are connected, that your life is connected to theirs, that you're part of a community. So we're just going to do that for 2 minutes. Just write down as many people you can think of. But who reminds you that you're connected? Who keeps you here on this earth? All right, so that was 2 minutes. Sometimes it might take people longer to come up with things. But I always encourage people to think too, because you never know, some days people might be able to think of 10 or more and couldn't stop, you know, it wasn't enough time to write everything, but there might be days too where you or those that you're working with can only think of 1 or 2 people to list. And in those moments, like, just remind them, whoever you're doing this activity with, that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many connections you have or people you list. For that day, you hold on tight to the person or pet or thing that reminds you that you belong in this world. And I always tell, you know, when I'm doing this activity too, if there's ever a day that you can't think of anyone to list, you can put down my name, you know, because I care about you, your health, and the future that lies ahead of you. And that I know this world is a better place because you're in it. So you might not want to say that to everybody, but, you know, I leave it to you depending on how you're running the activity as well. Yeah, any thoughts or questions about that activity? Okay. So in my community, we always like say this saying, you know, whenever we're in ceremony or sweat or praying, we always say like, you pray for everyone from the doorway in to the doorway out. And I love that, you know, because it means no one's like left out, no one's forgotten. So something as simple as a circle can remind us that we're all connected, and that tradition means everyone has a place in the circle, a place where they're needed, a place where they belong. So just encourage you to think about how you can use circles in whatever way you want, you know, whether everyone's quietly reading in a circle, because then at least physically, if we're even though we're not talking about it, like, hey, we're all in a circle connected, like our bodies know it, our bodies see it, you know, that we all have a place where we're at. In this picture, one thing I'm doing is just having the students just all write, like we're just writing poetry together, and the teachers are helping those who are younger. So we're just sitting in a circle and writing. When I've had slightly older students, we've done the group poem where everyone has their own notebook, but you write a line and you pass it along until you get your paper back. So that's a fun one to create a group poem. You can also do storytelling in the circle where everyone just out loud adds a sentence to the same circle. I think it's so much fun. If you notice, there's a beach ball back here too. One thing I do is I'll write different questions on the beach ball, you know, like, what's your favorite memory, or you know, what's your favorite song, or what do you do for fun? Like just any kind of different questions you write on that beach ball and you throw it around the circle. And then whoever catches it, you know, they answer the question that their right thumb is on. So it's a good way to just break down barriers and get everyone talking. And they love just throwing that beach ball at each other. So I know it seems simple, but for me, tradition is reminding our people in as many ways as possible that it's our responsibility to care for everyone in this circle, that everyone has a place. So we'll do our own little virtual circle for this one. So what I'm going to have everyone do is just write, and then we'll put it in the chat again, is just write. Think about one of the people maybe you listed, somebody who is your medicine, somebody who makes you feel connected, and write a word to them, a sentence to them, but using second person, like what you appreciate about them. So example could say, if I'm talking to Dr. Bays, I might say, you and your strength are inspiring to me every day. You know, or I might be writing to my husband, like, your kindness and patience is what makes you an amazing human being. So everyone's going to write a sentence. If you feel compelled to write more than one, you can drop it in the chat too. But write an affirmation like that to somebody, thinking of someone specific, maybe someone who is your medicine, someone who connects you, but don't use their name. Just say, you're wonderful because of this, or, you know, and so go ahead and drop them in the chat. And then I'll explain how you can do it in the circle too. And once you have yours, go ahead and write it in there. I'll write one too. Thank you, Shani. Thank you for the late night laughs and proving good men do exist. Your kind, patient, caring. Your teachings of ceremony has taken me a long way in life and will continue to carry me and your grandchildren. Thank you for including me on your spiritual path and praying for me. Your mental attitude in the midst of stage 4 cancer inspires me to live and love every moment of this life I have given. Thank you all for writing those so far. So this one thing you can do is when you're leading that activity, but in person, is you have people write those affirmations. Thank you for always listening to me with an open heart and mind. You have them write it on a piece of paper, then you crumple it up and we throw them back and forth at each other. Kids love doing that. It's like a snowball fight, but then after you do that for a little bit, you grab the one closest to you and you open it up and read it. So then you're reading somebody else's affirmation. And it can normally apply to everybody, because you're using just you, like, thank you for always listening to me with an open heart and an open mind. And then you just tell everyone at the end, even though you're reading somebody who you didn't specifically write, like, we are all connected, we are all creators' children. Like, all these words are meant for us, or meant for each other, because we all hold these habits inside of us. We all hold the ability to have that positive mental attitude, to teach other people, to be open, to listen, to be kind. So that's another way you can do the activity too, if you want to try to make it more interactive. And hope you share those nice comments with the people you wrote them about after this. I'm sure they would really appreciate it. Say, hey, I did this activity. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about, healthy outlets, and to remember that things don't just happen to you, but you have to help them move through you. One time, years ago, I had gotten in a car accident, and I didn't feel like I really hurt myself that bad. I had to wear my arm in a sling for a couple of weeks, but it wasn't broken or anything. And then fast forward 2 years after that, I'm like finally going to see like a chiropractor in the town I was at. And he was like, have you been in a car accident? And I was like 2 years ago. And he was just saying like, wow, like that trauma still is in your body. Like, we got to shift it and move it out. And so I've been thinking a lot lately just about like inlets and outlets, right? Like, we all have things we're taking in, and even more quickly now, TikTok, Instagram, like youth and people we're working with, it's just taking in so much information like so quickly. And then just things that happen to us personally, right? Like, if you hear arguments or just like other issues, like things that trouble us, like we're taking in all of these different things. But we really have to think more too about our outlets. Like, how are we letting it out? How are we letting it move through us? I've been trying to do this more just even in work. If I have a stressful meeting, I'm one to really just put things down, put it in a box, like it's fine. But I don't and I forget about it. I put it somewhere in my body, the stress, and I forget about it. I don't go back and move it through me. So I'm trying to intentionally more anything, even if it's after a stressful phone call, just shaking it out, or like dancing a little bit, playing one song to dance. One of my colleagues is a social worker for the state, and anytime he has like a hard call, and once he's done, like he'll go to the restroom and he'll wash his hands. Like, he just needs to put water on him to like let it move through him. So just remember that every inlet needs an outlet. And so we have to find those healthy outlets, not letting the trauma or anger or hurt stay in our body, because it can impact us physically. And that's why, learning to let go and reminding and teaching those we work with that one of the greatest skills you can have is that skill of letting go. So whatever you want to do with that too. Whether it's 30-second dance parties, washing your hands, or going outside, just thinking about when you have those inlets or those you're working with, you see something comes in, like, how are we helping to steward it to come out? And so I did want to share some resources that can go on your shelf. Definitely we'll be adding to this and sharing it. And if you have stuff to share, drop it in the chat because we'd love to see it. You know, what can we put on our shelf? You know, coloring books, you know, there's a lot of Indigenous coloring books or coloring pages out there we can use to help students with mindfulness and creativity. One thing that I bought recently is this Journal of Radical Permission by Adrienne Marie Brown and Sonia Renee Taylor. So if you really like to journal, I encourage you to get that. Or if you work with students too, like it has good questions in there. I just included a couple. You know, one of the questions was, what would it feel like to let my body be enough as is? Or what areas of life have I closed myself off to support and care from others? I thought that was a great one too, with some angsty teenagers I've worked with too, like just, you know, you got to think about who you closed off that cares about you, that supports you. And I had mentioned earlier about just a drum or musical instruments, like it's such a good way to get in the body. I know it can be loud too, but it is nice to have those right nearby. And of course, like our traditional medicines, you know, I really believe in like essential oils and things that smell too. So like for younger ones, like even if it is just having like some medicines there and some fabric where they can tie it in a tie, you know, probably not tobacco tie, but a little tie, and just like smell it, you know, go around, smell that sweetgrass, smell the sage to just help ground. And then I have a book too of positive affirmations that just says a lot of the things I've been saying today, like just little meditations or little words of affirmations that you can share or respond to. So I can include the link for that as well too. But just wanted to share my contact information there. Just on I actually don't have my Twitter anymore, just Instagram or my website or email on Facebook as well. But now I wanted to just thank you all for coming today and for listening, and wanted to just leave space these last 15 minutes to answer any questions that people might have, or just let you all share too. Like you all are amazing resources and experts in what you're doing as well too. So just wanted to also create that space if anything shared today made you think of activities or things you want to share with the group.
Thank you, Tanea, for sharing all these wonderful options, new tools to put in our toolboxes, activities, however you want to label them. There are so many great things that were just shared in this short amount of time. But I agree. There are several resources on the line with us today. So if any of you have additional tools, resources, ways that you interact with your young people, we'd love to hear from you. So please unmute yourselves, share them in the chat. And this isn't the end of the series. We have one more session that I'll talk about in just a few moments, but I'd like to hear from some of you as participants in today's session. Any comments?
I do have a comment. It was interesting, like while you were talking like, oh, you know, the rocks, got the rock, you know, all the stuff's in my office, feathers, got the feathers, you know. So I was just kind of laughing to myself as I'm going through this, going, it just really affirms like a lot of what I'm already doing with my students, you know, to help them feel safe and grounded. And it was interesting, the other day I had one of the custodial staff come in. They were giving us new paper towel dispensers. And he walked into my office and he just kind of looked at me, and I never met him before. And he said, "This is a really nice office." And it was, you know, it wasn't just like because it's nice, but I feel like he felt something in here. And like when the kids come in here, that my students come in here, you know, they do feel safe. And it's, you know, by doing all these little things, I have a bunch of fidgets, I have the coloring books. I am going to bring more of, like if I can get like a Palo Santo, like oil or something like that, that would be helpful. I do have the musical instruments, but I like the idea of the drum. So I'm going to look for a small drum to have in here. I think a lot of my students would really enjoy that. So thank you so much for all these activities. They're really good. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you for sharing. Who else would like to unmute themselves and share either what you're already doing or what you learned, what you appreciated about today? What ideas it sparked in you that you're going to try this new year with the kids, with your communities? Know that the slide deck and the recording will be sent to y'all from our communications team. It is important that you take time to fill out the survey. I'm going to share the last of my slide deck if I can get the right one up here. And anybody's welcome to unmute themselves, even if I'm sharing the slide out on the screen. Well, oops, there we go. This is the last slide that I need to share with you all. Reminding you of a few things. If you need to reach out to our center, that is our generic email at the top of the screen. We do have a second session coming up. August 30th, we'll be having Dr. Paulina Whitehat, who does a lot of work in the field of special education and language with our young people and their families in the Oregon area. And then we also have Dr. Mark Standing Eagle, who is a clinical psychologist, traditional practitioner, who works with Native families and their children. Both Dr. Whitehat and Dr. Standing Eagle are both Native professionals in their areas of expertise, and they're going to be sharing some additional ideas to build on your toolbox for this year. You know, Tanea gave us lots of great ideas, and I am going to borrow some of those as she gave us permission, because they are very, very worth continuing to use among our people. Very culturally appropriate, and that's one of the things that's going to be discussed in our next session on August 30th is how do we continue to do the important work we do that is culturally responsive, culturally appropriate, that stems from our culture and our connectedness. And one of the activities today, I mean, all of them had something to do with culture, but one of them talked about us being grounded in our culture and our identity. And that is so key for the success of our children and our teens in their school year, having that connection. So the next session, I have the registration link here on the screen for you. It's also on our website, I believe. It was in our newsletter that went out earlier this week. So please take time to sign up for that and participate in that next session, and know that we'll have two wonderful professionals here to help you in that area, preparing yourselves and your communities for a new year. It's important to take the survey, the GIPRA that's posted at the bottom of the sheet on the screen for you, because it helps us understand what you appreciate, what you learned from the sessions, what will be your takeaways, and then what we can do better for the next time. It's always important for us to learn how we can do better for our community. For those of you who actually are serving in our both urban and rural Native communities with families in the field of prevention, the field of education. Tanea has a wide range of experience in working with youth and their families. And so we know that it's important that when we have a kid in front of us in a classroom or in a counseling area, we're not just working with the young person, we're also working with their family. It needs to be a partnership. And so I really appreciate all the examples you gave today about thinking of the folks that have meaning in our life, that we are thinking about who has helped us along in our journey, and all of these important ways that you shared with us to keep building on staying connected, knowing who we are, recognizing the important ways that we can have an identity of our Native culture and still be successful when we recognize our identity. And I see Christina's hand is up, so I want to recognize that. Is that right?
I don't think so. I will unshare my hand.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. Anybody else have any comments or questions? You're welcome to post them in the chat. We have a few minutes left. I want to say thank you, Nalitsam, Kiana. Looks like we had a lot of folks participating on the West Coast. So it's really important that we acknowledge you getting up early, maybe, for some of you to be here present with us. So we say thank you. I did put the survey link back in the chat. Somebody asked for that again. So I just posted that. Just takes a few moments. And remember, it is anonymous, can't be traced back to you, but it does help us understand what you appreciated about today's session, what you learned, what will you use in your community, and how we can do better for the next time. The next session for this series will be on another Wednesday, August 30th, and it'll be still at 1 p.m. Central. I put that in the chat. And so we'd love to see you back. Please bring a colleague or two if you feel that they will benefit from the information that we share. Tanae has done a great job at setting us up for the next part of this, how we continue to build on the success for our young people and their families so that we, as a community, doorway in, doorway out, we do this in a good way, helping our young people lead healthy lives both in and out of a classroom. When we look at that medicine wheel that Tanae had on the screen, remember, we do things holistically. We're not just looking at the mental and physical, we're also looking at the emotional and the spiritual components of our young people, because that's who we are as people. That's our nature as Indigenous people, and we want to recognize that, including in the classroom. So I want to say thank you. Any other comments or questions before we sign off for today? Tanea, thank you again for doing a great job sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your experiences across Indian country with our people today. Everybody have a great afternoon, and we'll see you on August 30th. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.